Hello class, this is Miss Chicoy, and this is Algebra Review. So we're going to talk about isolating, undoing, and then really making sure that you know that everything you can do with numbers, you can do with letters. So specifically on the homework, this is going to be part 2. Specifically number 1. Note there's a small mistake. So on number 1, E, I forgot to tell you which one to solve for, so it's B equals mu naught I over 2 pi r. Please solve for I, so I want it to look like I equals at the end. So first we're going to talk about isolating. So the main thing about isolating is you need to know what it means. There's a lot of different ways we can say it. So one of the main ones is they'll say solve for C, or isolate C, or write as, let me restate that. Write the equation as a function of E and M, or write C as a function of E and M. All this is saying is that it wants you to get C by itself. So anytime it asks you to solve for something, or isolate, or write as a function of, all it's saying is that we want it to look like C equals is your end goal. It should be C equals, and actually in this case, as far as how do you get to that, is something we are going to talk about next with undoing. So undoing is the idea that anytime when you're solving for something, such as solving for C, you need to move things away or undo them. So if it exists, you have to undo it. So these are partners. So if you have a positive, or if you're adding, it's undone by subtracting and vice versa. Multiplication is undone by division. Squaring is undone by square rooting. Sine, cosine, and tangent are all undone or inversed by inverse sine, inverse cosine, and inverse tangent. Not that we're going to be doing a lot of e's and natural logs, but they're undone by the natural log. So these are all different ways of undoing. So something you should know is, remember, I mentioned it, but these go both ways. And you should have sort of a working list in your head about how these work. Alright, so something really important that I know a lot of students struggle with is that everything you can do with numbers, you can do with any variable. What I mean by that, a number is just a number, a variable is just a variable. You're very used to dealing with any sort of numbers and using x and y, but really we could call these something else and it would work out just the same. To be poetic, a rose by any other name is still a rose. It doesn't matter what we have there, it just matters that it exists. So, to do an example, alright, so say we have this equation, and it asks you to solve for v. So, remember, think about the way that we're going to undo things. Try this on your own, and then come back for the answer. Alright, now that you've tried it on your own, we know we want to get this one alone. So first off, we need to get this whole section away from it. This is what it means to undo. So we want to first subtract. So remember, it was an addition, so we want to subtract. m1g times h1. Remember, they might have long names, but they are just the same as any other variable. And if we subtract it from one side, we must also subtract it from the other side. So that means at our second step, our equation, our 1/2 m1v squared is over here. We have m1gh2 minus m1gh1 over here. And what you can do now, you'll notice that you have two of the same sign, or two of the same here. You can factor it out. So you can take the m1 out of it, and then you have, actually you can take the m1 and the g out of it. You got 2, so it's m1g, and all that's left in there is h2 minus h1. This has not changed. Alright, and now again you want to start getting things away from this v2, so you can divide by everything else, in this case 1/2 m1. Notice you have the m1 and the top and the bottom. You can cancel it. Then as you have essentially a 1 over a 1 over a 2. You can think of it as almost like a double negative, which means it ends up popping back on the top. So that means later it's going to look like v squared is equal to 2g h2 minus h1. And then remember, we have a square, so the way to undo that square is square root both sides. So ultimately, you would get v equals the square root of 2g h2 minus h1. Alright, and we'll try another example. Alright, so if you are solving for r in this case, there's a couple things you can do. One, you should recognize that this is on the bottom, which is not good. If you leave it on the bottom, you would be solving for 1 over r squared, or 1 over r, which is not what you want. So first things first, you need to get r on the top. Sometimes the easiest way of doing this is flipping everything. So you can flip everything, so it'd be 1 over t minus mg is equal to, again, flipped r over m times v squared. And now from here, this is on the bottom, so you need to multiply, because it's being divided right now. And you must do this on both sides. Right. This will simplify to 1, so you'll have r equals mv squared over t minus mg. Alright, good luck, and I'll see you on the other videos.